Welcome back for part 3. Now we're going to talk about why we should expect those goals to be at cross purposes with our own goals. Now, I want to say at the outset that this video, out of the 4 videos in this series, is the most difficult to internalize. So I encourage you to rewind the video as many times as you need to, and to explore the extra articles, videos that I include in order to get a really good understanding of this material. A roadmap for this video. I want to give you a little bit of background for how we train AIs. I need to give you some technical details in order to understand parts B and C. Part B being the outer alignment and inner alignment problems. And then part C is what Richard calls a more holistic view of alignment. So let's talk a bit about how we train AIs. I'm only going to get into a few of the details here, but I strongly encourage you to go watch a couple of videos by 3 Blue 1 Brown, terrific YouTuber, on neural networks and deep learning. And I'll put those links in the description. Deep learning. Deep learning is a type of machine learning. Machine learning is by far the most dominant paradigm for creating artificial intelligence. Deep learning is by far the most popular way these days to do machine learning. Okay. Deep learning utilizes neural networks inspired by the structure of the human brain. Let's say we want to create a neural network, an AI, that's represented by a neural network that's going to be an image classifier. And let's say that we have a bunch of images of dogs, cats, horses, and chickens, and we want it to be really good at looking at an image and telling us, categorizing it as a dog, cat, horse, or chicken. Okay, so here in the output, maybe this neuron corresponds to dog, this neuron to cat, horse, and chicken. Okay. And here in the input layer, each of these neurons would correspond to a pixel of the image, right? You take the image and you get the grayscale value of each pixel, okay? And you feed those grayscale values, those numbers, to each of these neurons, right? Okay. And these input layers, these input neurons are connected through these little edges to the next layer, which is connected to the next layer and the next layer and the output layer. So information gets fed through the neural network. We start by feeding in the pixel values and gets fed through the network. And by the end, we get an output corresponding to how likely the network thinks each image is a dog, cat, horse, or chicken. Each of these lines connecting to neurons in the neural network, I want you to imagine a little number that's on that line, okay, called a weight. So maybe there's a 0.4 right here connecting those 2 neurons, right, connecting neuron A and neuron B. That weight corresponds to how strongly the message from neuron A gets expressed to neuron B, okay? So if neuron B really cares about what neuron A has to say, this weight is going to be higher. If it doesn't care about what that neuron has to say, it's going to be lower. Right? And the whole process of training a neural network is tuning those weights in such a way that the image classifier is really accurate, really good at classifying images. How does the tuning of those weights happen? Well, this is where our discussion of supervised learning can come into play. Supervised learning is a training regime where let's say that we start off with 5,000 pictures of horses, dogs, cats, and chickens, and somebody's gone through and labeled each of those, right? We feed a horse image through the neural network. Maybe it's really young neural network, it's really bad at its job, and it says, oh, I think that's a chicken, right? And we say, nope, here's the label, it's actually a horse, right? And the neural network learns something from that, right? It goes back and it says, oh, okay, that was a horse, huh? Okay, so let me update this, let me update these weights, right? So that next time I'll do better on that type of picture. And it does that a bunch of times. We feed through all the data a bunch of times, and it tunes its weights in such a way that it does better and better on categorizing these images. Gradient descent is the process by which the neural network takes in the information about how it did, right, on classifying a specific image and tuning its weights. Gradient descent is the process for turning feedback into adjustments of those weights. Gradient descent is an optimizer. It's an optimization process, right? It's optimizing the neural network for optimal performance on its task. Now, I want to contrast supervised learning with reinforcement learning. And I think the best way to talk about reinforcement learning is to talk about training a dog. So you can think of the agent, the AI, as this dog that's getting trained, and the environment as the human that this dog is interacting with, trees, squirrels, whatever else is in the environment. In a machine learning context, the environment would be, maybe it's a video game, maybe it's a maze that we've set up, right? Some virtual environment that the agent, the AI, is interacting with, right? The agent's going to take an action in the world. It's going to get some reward, right? Maybe this dog is trying to learn how to sit. The owner says sit, and the dog, rolls around a little bit. It's going to get some level of reward, and the reward could be negative reward, could be punishment. And then it's also going to get some new observation of what the environment looks like after it's acted in the environment. How has its action changed the environment? Right. Okay. And the aim of the reinforcement learning agent is to figure out a policy, okay, a mapping between its actions and the rewards and observations it gets. How can I, as a reinforcement learning agent, figure out which actions lead to the most reward? I'm trying to optimize my reward. Let's talk about outer alignment and inner alignment. You might be asking yourself, okay, Richard No is telling me that we should expect AGIs to develop goals that are at cross purposes with our own goals. Why can't we just be really careful in how we train AI so they never develop misaligned goals? Okay. Well, a couple of problems can arise. The first is the outer alignment problem. It turns out that it's just really hard and potentially even impossible to specify reward functions that reward behavior we like and don't also reward behavior we don't like. All right. Another word that's closely related to the outer alignment problem is specification gaming. And I strongly encourage you to go read this article. It's very beginner friendly. It's only 8 minutes long, has a lot of cool examples to help you get a grasp of what the outer alignment problem is. A few intuitive examples of the outer alignment problem is King Midas, right? King Midas tried to specify what he wanted. He tried to specify, all right, I want everything I touch to turn to gold. And he got some of what he wanted, right? He got a lot of wealth, but he also got a lot of what he didn't want, right? The story goes that when he touched his bread, his food, it would turn into gold, and he starved to death because he couldn't eat anything. Let me give you a couple real world examples of how this has shown up in AI. The goals of a team of researchers was to get a robot arm to learn to stack a red Lego block on top of a blue block. Okay. And here's the reward function they came up with. The agent was rewarded based on how closely the height of the bottom face of the red block matched the height of the face of the blue block when the arm was not touching either of the blocks. And here's what happened. Right, here's the initial setup. You've got the robot arm, you've got the red and the blue block. And here's what the agent did. It said, all right, well, you want me to max it, you want me to, get the height of the face of the red block as close to the top of the blue block as possible. All right, I'm just going to flip it over. Much easier than learning how to actually pick it up and maneuver it over and put it on top of the blue block. Specification gaming, it's an outer alignment problem. All right, what if we totally solve the outer alignment problem? We learn how to avoid specification gaming. We learn how to specify perfect reward functions that reward what we want, and they don't reward anything that we dislike. Okay, there are still problems that can come up. Now, describing the inner alignment problem is really tricky. I'm going to do my best here, but I strongly encourage you to go watch Robert Miles' videos, and while you're on his channel, watch a bunch of his videos. He has an excellent YouTube channel. And then I also encourage you to read this rather long but really useful article on the inner alignment problem by Evan Hubinger and some others. Now, I want to give you an example just so you get a feel of what the inner alignment problem is. Gradient descent and evolution. Okay? Gradient descent is an optimizer. It's an optimization process. Okay, right? It helps the network optimize its performance on the task. Evolution is very similar to gradient descent. It's also an optimizer, an optimization process. It helps organisms tune themselves, tune their features in a way that helps them perform really well on the task of reproduction. At times, for certain organisms, evolution helps them develop a set of heuristics, right? Like a plant, right? A plant is not thinking, it's not planning, it's not an agent. It just has a set of heuristics that it executes, okay, and that evolution dictates to it in order to help it maximize its reproductive fitness. In the case of humans, evolution, quote unquote, decided to, instead of creating an organism that operated based on a set of heuristics, it created an optimizer, right? So the optimization process, evolution, created an optimizer agent. Okay, so humans are agenty. We plan, we learn, we have our own goals. Okay, so gradient descent, which we call the base optimizer, the base optimization process, optimizes a neural network according to the reward function, which we call the base objective. All right, so we've got the base optimizer and we've got the base objective. But what if gradient descent produces an optimizing agent, a Mesa-optimizer? So in this example up here, a human would be called a Mesa-optimizer. Okay. What if gradient descent, the base optimizer, produces a Mesa-optimizer with an objective called the Mesa-objective that's different from the base objective, that's misaligned with the base objective? Okay. I hope you're getting the sense here that even if the reward function is a perfect specification of what we want gradient descent to optimize for, there may be still misalignment between the base objective and the Mesa objective if gradient descent just so happens to select for Mesa optimizers. Okay, so let's just make this more concrete. The base optimizer is evolution. The base objective, maximize reproductive fitness. That's what evolution wants. The Mesa-optimizer that evolution creates is humans, right? So, sometimes evolution doesn't create Mesa-optimizers. Sometimes it creates organisms that operate based on heuristics, like plants. But sometimes it creates Mesa-optimizers, in this case, humans. The Mesa-objective of humans, what are the objectives of humans? Well, they're certainly more complex than maximizing reproductive fitness. Humans have all sorts of objectives that we pursue in the world. And we're not just single-mindedly laser focused on maximizing reproductive fitness. And that leads to misaligned behaviors, things like masturbation and birth control that are obviously misaligned with maximizing reproductive fitness, right? Okay. So you get the sense here that this is an alignment problem, right? And I hope you can extrapolate from here to how this may cause problems in the real world. Right, let's say that we've solved the inner alignment problem. We're able to specify our goals to AIs really clearly, but gradient descent produces Mesa-optimizers, okay, whose Mesa objectives are misaligned with our original base objectives. All right, we still get alignment problems. After talking about the outer and inner alignment problems, after laying out what they actually are, Richard then turns to some potential solutions that have been proposed by people in the community to the alignment problem. I'm not going to go into all of those. I encourage you to go read the article to get a sense of what solutions are being tried to the alignment problem. Instead, I'm going to dive deeply into the final part of the section of the article, which is called, a more holistic view of alignment. Some things that Richard wants, one main thing that Richard wants researchers to keep in mind, and that is that we shouldn't equate the maximum of a reward function with the behavior we hope to select for during training, right? Thinking of, I think what Richard is trying to counter for here is that a lot of people in the AI safety community think of and conceptualize of the maximum of the reward function as this is the behavior that I am targeting in my AI. This is the type of behavior that I want the AI to do. The maximum of my reward function is a pure representation of the behavior that I hope that the AI will do. In the real world, though, Richard points out, things get more complicated for three main reasons. The first one of those reasons is wireheading. Okay, now wireheading is when an agent is able to gain access to its reward channel and then just flood itself with reward. And Richard says that, you know, if we tell an agent to maximize its reward, okay, wireheading is almost always going to be the optimal strategy in all cases. Okay, so should we really want an agent to optimize its reward function? Well, no, because if we tell an agent to optimize its reward function, in almost all cases, that's going to mean that the agent is going to seek out some wireheading type of strategy. Another reason why Richard calls reward functions a leaky abstraction is that real-world reinforcement learning agents don't have infinite time, right? And therefore, they can't visit every state of the environment. In other words, they can't try out every set of actions, okay? And see, they can't probe the environment and say, oh, if I do this, then this happens. I get this reward. If I do this, then this happens. It can't explore the entirety of the reward function, and therefore it can't ever maximize its reward, okay? So in the real world, reinforcement learning agents don't actually find the maximum of the reward function. Moreover, when it comes to artificial general intelligence, by definition, the agent never actually trains on the task that it's going to undertake during development, right? Its training task is set up to be, the training task for an AGI is set up to help it develop general skills that it can apply to a wide range of tasks, okay? So the behavior of the AGI isn't during deployment, it's not representative of the maximum of the reward function that it had during training, right? This agent is having to extrapolate from its training environment and from the reward it was getting during training to what's going on in the actual world. It's having to generalize, it's having to infer. Another reason to not equate the maximum of a reward function with the desired behavior that we want is that researchers modify reward functions so they don't purely represent the behavior the researcher hopes to see. Right? For example, there are researchers who will modify their reward function to, yes, reward specific behaviors, right, and shape the behavior of the agent in certain ways, but also they will add in terms in the reward function to reward specific features in the neural network, right? They reward specific internal representation, specific types of cognition within the neural network, as opposed to just purely behavior, right? So Richard says, how should we think about them? How should we think about reward functions instead? And I'm going to include these, I'm going to go through these two actual paragraphs from the text. This is from the text that we're distilling here. The reason that I'm doing this is just show you, to illustrate for you that you have the tools that you need after watching these videos to go and actually take a look at the article, right? It's not that intimidating, and I bet that you can understand it after getting these broad brushstrokes overview. How should we think about them? How should we think about reward functions instead? Well, in trying to ensure that AGI will be aligned, we have a range of tools available to us, not just reward functions. We can choose the neural architectures. We can choose the reinforcement learning algorithms. We can choose the environments. We can choose the optimizers. There's a lot of tools besides just reward functions. We should think about our ability to specify an objective function as the most powerful such tool, yet it's not powerful because the objective function defines an agent's motivations, but rather because samples drawn from the reward function shape that agent's motivations and cognition. From this perspective, we should be less concerned about what the extreme optima of our objective functions look like, because they won't ever come up during training. But remember what I was saying earlier, that the reinforcement learning agent doesn't have infinite time to actually explore the entire training environment and figure out where the actual optima is, okay? So they won't ever come up during training. The optima won't come up during training. And because because they'd likely involve tampering meaning wireheading here. Instead, we should focus on how objective functions in conjunction with other parts of the training setup create selection pressures towards agents, which think in the ways we want, and therefore have desirable motivation in a wide range of circumstances. This idea that we shouldn't conceptualize of the maximum of a reward function as the pure expression of the behavior that we hope to see from an AI, is a point that Richard just wanted to hammer home really hard in this article, just to make sure that we were going about the process of aligning AIs in as wise a way as we could. That concludes part 3. And next time we will look at, okay, so let's say that we buy parts 1, 2, and 3. Why should we expect AIs to actually be able to be successful in taking control of the future from humanity? Check the description for links to all the articles and videos mentioned in this video, and I'll see you next time.